honorable members of our nation, esteemed members of the press, at the outset of my remarks, I would like to greet you all with my most cordial feelings. Now, in terms of democracy and economy, we strive to make Turkey one of the greatest on the planet, and we have left 18 years behind in this endeavor. And throughout 18 years, we instigated many a reform, and we set the infrastructure that would enable us to fulfill our goals, from education to healthcare, from justice to industry, from sport to social support. We have been engaged in this struggle to get Turkey to make a giant leap. And what we did actually doubled or trebled or even quadrupled what was done before us. Of course, what we have done is substantial, but Turkey has a even greater potential, and we need to be ambitious in our goals. In the last 7 or 8 years, political, social, and economic threats once again reveal the importance of a great Turkey, a strong Turkey. Behind these attacks, we see heinous motives, and one of those motives is to make sure that Turkey is locked within itself, like in the past, and for Turkey to become a country that sort of consumes its energy for futile means. But we realized this, and we did our best to focus on our 2023 targets. Terrorist organizations and other pawns that were used to derail Turkey, we took them out of the picture. We did our best to make sure that our borders were secure. And those who realized that they could not make Turkey bow down as a result of such efforts, they turned their eyes to diplomacy. And again, we were able to frustrate their plans by initiating a series of reforms. Yes, we have already been focusing on these reforms, but we will expedite these efforts and translate them into bona fide triumphs. And we want to bequeath our youngsters a Turkey that they can build upon 2053 goals. And in the last couple of weeks and months, we have been announcing our series of reforms in the judiciary. The Human Rights Action Plan was previously announced, and last Friday we announced a new reform package vis-à-vis the Turkish economy, and the objective of this is to make sure that our economy focuses on employment, export, and production, and that we would get our economy to grow as part of a well-thought-out roadmap. We always say that Turkey needs to attach a great importance to its economic strength, just like its independence. Now, since 2002, we have been doing our utmost to help Turkey grow, but we have been subjected to attacks in the last couple of years, and they target our growth and our stability. That's why our reform package will be initiated to achieve stability and growth in economy, just like in the other areas. Now, stability, in order to strengthen stability in economy, macro policies will be bolstered by auxiliary policies, fiscal affairs, financial industry, current account deficit, and job creation are some of the areas where we will be initiating a series of reforms. As part of structural reforms, we are going to strengthen our corporate structure and and we are going to facilitate domestic trade, and we are going to also focus on our competition legislation. Our objective is to make sure that Turkey becomes a rising star and reaches its deserved destination in the post-COVID-19 era. And these reforms will facilitate our growth, and we will continue to focus on our reform packages from the public industry to the private sector, from civil society to all segments of the society. We have received feedback when we were drafting these reforms. During the preparatory period, we attach great importance to this, and in the implementation process as well, we will be open to all sorts of criticism and feedback, as long as they are constructive. But those who try to sabotage Turkey's efforts will ultimately be judged by the Turkish nation. Honorable members of our nation, COVID-19 arrived in Turkey on the 10th of March of last year. It has been exactly 1 year, and in 192 countries, 2,700,000 people lost their lives because of this novel coronavirus. And in Turkey, 2 million people were infected, and unfortunately we lost 29,000 of those people. Those who lost their lives, we would like to offer their families our deepest condolences. Now, at this time, many people made great sacrifices, especially healthcare professionals deserve our word of thanks. And taking this opportunity, I would like to offer them my gratitude on behalf of our nation. The social security system in Turkey, as well as the healthcare infrastructure, meant that Turkey was exemplary in its fight against COVID-19. And even at the times when we experience peaks, our healthcare centers continue to serve our citizens. And in the past, people were denied service at hospitals, and the elderly sadly died at homes, care homes in Turkey. But those days are thankfully gone. This is the largest healthcare catastrophe of the last century, and our state mobilized all its resources in order to tackle this difficult challenge. And in light of the evaluations of the scientific board, we made a series of decisions, and thanks to the advantages put forth by the executive presidential system, we were able to act fast, and we were able to take steps efficiently. At the time of the pandemic, many countries experienced problems such as disturbances in the supply chain and some weaknesses when it comes to security. We thankfully didn't experience any of these, and the pandemic actually revealed the strength of the executive presidential system in terms of crisis management, and also highlighted the importance we attached to healthcare. City centers that we built all across the nation played a critical role, especially at the time of the pandemic. Now, everyone with a clear conscience would appreciate these accomplishments. Those who have made it to city hospitals are saying that it is a blessing that despite the opposition, these hospitals have been built. From healthcare to education, from social aid to economy, during the pandemic, we took additional decisive steps, thereby further strengthening our infrastructure as Turkey. Now, when we look at our labs, the number was 73, and we increased this by sixfold, and now we have 461 labs that can run tests when it comes to COVID-19, and isolation and filiation systems were created, and we also created a monitoring system, and some of our dorms have been turned into quarantine centers, and 122,000 citizens were hosted in these dorms. Developed countries, when they were having problems regarding the procurement of masks, we were able to build our ventilators ourselves, and we were able to also export to 20 countries these devices. We expedited projects that were under construction. Istanbul, Başakşehir, Konya, and Tekirdağ city hospitals were also operationalized as part of this mobilization. In a short while, we were able to build hospitals that have 1,800 hospitals, two emergency hospitals that were built in Istanbul. So even at the time of the pandemic, 16,000 new beds were added to our number of hospital beds in Turkey. And we became one of the first countries to initiate vaccination in the world, and currently 11,500,000 vaccinations have been administered in Turkey. As such, we rank the 5th in the world, and we are still continuing to work on our local vaccine, and until we get that done, we will continue to procure vaccines from abroad. And at times when people could not leave their homes, education came to the forefront as a priority, and the EBA television channel was inaugurated on the 23rd of March, and remote learning became a part of our lives. Thousands of teachers contributed to the system, and 12,500 hours of education was delivered. And in February, in an incremental fashion, we initiated face-to-face education. At the previous cabinet meeting, we talked about the scope of face-to-face education, and we widened that scope. And all mobile phone subscribers in Turkey would get up to 8 gigabytes per month to have access to the EBA TV remote learning platform. And also, certain installments have been postponed for education loans, and also we have a social protection shield, and we transferred a total amount of 56 billion Turkish lira in terms of social aid to our citizens. At the time of the pandemic, the furlough scheme scope was widened, and the conditions were made easier, and 3,700,000 workers received a substantial amount of social aid. And we extended this practice, and we are going to end this practice by the end of March. Those who do not qualify for furlough scheme, 2.5 million people who were put on unpaid leave, they will receive up to 10 billion lira in cash, aid, and that's what they received. And 1 million people received 5.5 billion lira unemployment benefits. And with the normalization support, 3.6 billion lira was spent for premium offsetting. In order to ensure stability in employment, 2-month compensation working period was extended to 4 months. And since the very beginning of the pandemic, many incentives and subsidies were provided, and they total 80 billion Turkish lira. And 1.3 million workplaces and 40 billion premium debts were postponed for 6 months. COVID-19 test and care services within the scope of healthcare insurance, 7.8 billion lira have been spent thus far. Social support program reached out to 6.5 million households, 1,000 lira in cash aid per household. We also initiated a campaign of solidarity, and we collected more than 2 billion Turkish lira in aid, and we were able to hand these over to those in need. Honorable members of our nation, In order to mitigate the impact of the pandemic, the Economic Stability Shield package was shared with the nation in March of last year. And in light of needs and in light of recent developments, we updated the scope of this package. We postponed some of the debts, we restructured some of the debts, and some grants were also provided to different segments of the society in a bid to support our citizens who were negatively impacted by the pandemic. We also reviewed tax regimens, especially for our merchants. We provided 1,000 lira per month in cash, and those merchants who were renting their workplaces for 3 months in large cities, 750, in other cities 500 lira are being provided. Within this scope, we received 140,000 applications, and in total 2,080,000,000 lira is being paid. Now, the amount was set as 1,000 lira loss of income support, and we have approved around 1 million applicants, and we are also reviewing applications for loss of turnover. After 24th of March, when force majeure came into effect, also VAT payments were postponed for 6 months, and more than 2 million taxpayers benefited from this scheme. And also around this time, in order to bolster trade, we reduced VAT in certain industries from 8% to 1%, or from 18% to 2%. Last year, around 1 million merchants, business owners received loans that totaled 42.6 billion Turkish lira. Tesco, because of the pandemic, also is offering restructuring facilities to those who cannot serve their debts, and 30,000 business owners benefited from this scheme. Though, in order to fight exuberant pricing, we established a council. Within this framework, we carried out inspections, and up until today, 32 million lira worth of administrative fines have been levied. Since the very first day of the pandemic, we focused on food security of our nation, and we made sure that there were no negative developments in these areas. We put to the forefront our production focus, and 9.3 billion lira was handed out to our farmers for animal husbandry and for other sorts of production as well. And this year, agricultural support, the total amount is 24 billion Turkish lira. Now, we postponed loan payments for 6 months for our agro business owners, and also we provided animal feed to our manufacturers, and natural parks rent payments without any interest rates have been postponed as well. 75% grant, 6,000 tons of seeds have been handed out to our farmers, and agricultural land and 2B sales related 46,500 rights owners in April, May and June. Their payments for these months without any interest rate and without any need for application have been postponed for 3 months. Now, Treasury-owned agricultural land is used by 18,000 agricultural business owners, and again, their payments have been postponed for 3 months without any interest rates whatsoever. Now, in our fight against the pandemic in culture and art, private theater companies were given 35 million, cinema sector was given 89 million lira in terms of government aid. In music industry, 37 applications were received for 4 months. They received 1,000 lira per month, and that's 123 million lira in support that was provided. In tourism, in 2020, 16 million visitors came to Turkey, and compared to our competitor countries, we were one of the countries that had the least amount of shrinkage when it comes to tourism. Certain convicts were given the opportunity to leave prisons in a bid to prevent the pandemic from spreading across prisons, and we used remote connections for trials as well, and also or disinfectants, masks, gloves, and gowns. We increased the production of these items. We believe that inspection of the practice or implementation is as important as taking precautions. That's why our administrators were mobilized, and those who live alone and those who have no families above the age of 65 also received help, and we initiated social support groups to help them, and NGO volunteers, civil servants, and youngsters joined these ranks, and 145,000 people actually served within the scope of this project, and more than 9 million requests of citizens above the age of 65 were honored, and we visited more than 3 million households, and our team members made our citizens feel that they are not alone. Now, those under isolation, around 31 million inspections were carried out. Now, world economies almost came to a halt because of the pandemic, but as Turkey, we were able to continue with our investments, and throughout this process, 400 kilometers of roads were built, and 43 kilometers of bridges were built, and 75 kilometers worth of tunnels were operationalized. Amongst these, Ankara-Niğde Highway, Menemen Ali Ağa, Çandarlı Highway, Northern Marmara Highway are some of the substantial projects that we were able to complete. Now, for our citizens within Turkey, obviously we did our best, but we did not neglect our brothers and sisters living abroad Turkey. Since the very beginning of the pandemic, we were able to, from 142 countries, repatriate 100,000 citizens. We were able to bring them to Turkey and bring them to their families. From 67 countries, more than 5,000 people were brought to Turkey through emergency flights, and we were also able to assist citizens of 91 countries, 38,000 people who desired to reach their countries through Turkey, and we were able to send medical aid to a very large number of countries across the world. Now, in order to mitigate social implications of the pandemic, we were able to allocate 39 million to projects all across the world, and we were able to support our R&D specialists. We offered them exemptions of rent. Honorable members of our nation, this is like a summary of the summary, but by taking these steps, we were able to help different segments of the society, and we did our best so that we could mitigate the negative impact of the pandemic. It is incumbent on us to help our nation, but cleanliness, wearing of masks, and practicing social distancing are incredibly important. We need to expedite our vaccination efforts and keep up the morale, and we need to prepare ourselves for the post-COVID-19 era, and number of cases and hospitalized cases and deaths must be reduced below a certain threshold. Otherwise, no matter what we do, even if we open up all the businesses, because of the fact that our contact with the world be limited, it will not mean much. In the previous cabinet meeting, we classified our cities based on number of cases and vaccination. So we announced a classification system. In every class, it was also announced in a transparent fashion what normalization steps would be taken. And the new normalization precautions, as we share them with you, we also indicated that the cities would be deciding for themselves how they would fare in the future, depending on how they adhere to the rules. Our Ministry of Healthcare is keeping a close eye on the progress of the pandemic all across our cities, and we had the opportunity to assess the developments of the last 2 weeks at today's cabinet meeting. In certain cities, there is a relative increase in the number of cases, but this increase does not translate into ICU hospitalization and intubation of patients, and if they do, in a limited capacity, and that is something that gives us hope. And also, as we increase the number of vaccinations, we see that our fight against the pandemic is gaining momentum. We need to make sure that we adhere to these precautions and that we need to carry out inspections much more rigorously. We will be keeping a closer eye on this process. Keeping in mind all of this data, at today's meeting, we decided to extend the current practice in our cities in a bid to further observe the developments in our cities, and members of our nation may have fallen short of showing the necessary level of attention to adhering to the rules, perhaps because of the initiation of normalization, but we will be much more vigilant, I'm sure, and we will overcome this challenge altogether. I would like to call out to all our citizens to adhere to these rules in a bid to reduce their personal risk and also contribute to their own cities and to their country in terms of overcoming this pandemic. If we adhere to the rules, if we stick to the precautions, new limitations, new restrictions will not be announced. If not, unfortunately, the opposite will be true. May God help us in this endeavor. I greet you all with my deepest regards and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Değerli arkadaşlar, sanıyorum sizlere de asrın küresel salgını, Türkiye'nin koronavirüsle başarılı mücadelesi kitabı sizlere dağıtıldı.
And this book, I don't know if it has been distributed to you.
Dağıtılmamış Fahrettin Bey.
It has not been distributed to everyone, Fahrettin Bey.
Matbuada biraz sonra dağıtılacak. Evet, bunu
So this book that tells the success story of Turkey's fight against the pandemic will be distributed to you soon. Hopefully you will benefit from it. Thank you.